Greetings, Andy here again, and in this video I'm reviewing another four new release albums that I bought during September. So there's a great mix here again, as in the first of these I did, and as with that I've got two releases from old favourite, or from bands which have been around a long time, let's put it that way. One is a favourite, the other one less so. And I've got a US band, as last time, which is led by quite a spiky female singer and lyricist. And I've also got, and I'm going to start with this one, an album released by a female singer who has a sort of, shall we say, a better known other half. And I'm talking here of Taf Ra and her album, The Prophet and The Madman. Now, if you look carefully at that, Taf, put it on the other side, Taf Ra, Taf is sort of Fatima backwards. And that's who she is. She is Mrs. Kamasi Washington, Mrs. Fatima Washington. Now, actually, she goes by the name Taf Ra. This is her debut album. And there is a better known, I believe, film producer and director called Fatima Washington, so they probably get mixed up. This is jazz, and I think this is really good. So I think, on balance, just thinking back through the year, this is probably my jazz album of the year so far. She is of North African descent. Now lives in LA with Kamasi. He's all over this. He produces it and obviously plays sax on a number of tracks. The album is, the reference, The Prophet and The Madman, are two books of several in a sequence, apparently, by one Khalil Gibran. I've never heard of him. This goes back to the 1920s, I think. And they are, this is what I've read, they are a collection of parables and poems on seemingly life, the universe and everything. Now, it's all very spiritual, but that all sort of, to be honest, washes over me. This is all about the jazz, and it's fabulous. And occasionally, on some tracks, it really is more jazz fusion than you know, outright jazz. Other tracks, it's proper outright jazz. You know, there's those jazz fusion sounds are sort of accompanied by wah-wah guitar and synths. Fatima's got a beautiful voice. It's a very high register, and it sort of soars above the music sometimes in a way that works for me. Now, I gather from having read some reviews that some people find it a little bit wearing. It at times reminds me a little bit of Kate Bush, you know, that sort of high. So it's not for everyone, but it works for me. Sometimes she's got sort of a choral background vocals going on with her as well, which really works and sort of softens it slightly, you know. And in parts there's twinkly piano going on, orchestration, and of course Kamasi's superb saxophone. With this, it's a double album, nicely presented, and you know, it's a full double, so they're reasonable tracks. I think there's 11 in total, so they're not, you know, they're not short, they're reasonable length. To me, this is a whole album. You know, it's an immersive experience. It's not really one where you think, oh, you know, that track really stands out from the others. It's the whole, and you know, for me, this is a fabulous jazz album, and it's just simply, it looks, even the you see there, the label looks very old fashioned, and it's just on plain black vinyl, double, as I say. And so to the next one, and this album is by the band Wednesday, and I believe there's lots of bands called Wednesday, but this one is, should we say, the current Wednesday from Asheville, North Carolina, which is one of only about a couple of places I've ever been to in the United States. Went on a conference there a few years ago. Anyway, they're a five-piece, and they're led by Carly Hartzman, who's obviously the singer and also the lyricist of these. This is their fourth studio album now, and then with their third album, which was called Rats Saw God, which came out, when was that, 23, I think, and that was their takeoff, if you like. So that was, available here. I pre-ordered it, absolutely loved it, it's brilliant. So I had great hopes for this album, Bleeds, and it doesn't disappoint. Again, it's a move on, it's a maturing in terms of her lyric writing and singing, but also in terms of the music, which obviously the band as a whole contribute to. This is really a breakup album. So apparently, I didn't know any of this, but apparently Carly Hartzman had a long-term romantic affair with the guitarist who's called, checking my notes, M.J. Lenderman. Don't know which that's what he goes by the name of, just his initials. And that broke up. So they broke up, but they sort of, it must have been difficult. They kept it a secret from the rest of the band while they produced this whole album and didn't sort of own up to it until the album was actually in the can, if that's the right word. But apparently, so Lenderman has kept with the band, but only from a studio perspective. So he's also doing his own solo stuff, apparently, and isn't touring with them any longer. It doesn't really fit into any sort of specific genre. It's quite difficult to do. So, at some moments, it's very varied. So, it drifts from quite sort of gentle Americana, really. So, for example, there's quite a nice Americana ballad called Elderberry Wine. But at other times, it's full on post-punk. So for example, on side 2, Wasp is a 1.5 minute or just over screaming post-punk. It's absolutely brilliant. It's out and out post-punk, not remotely Americana, and it ends with a sort of cathartic scream from Carly. It's one of the funny things I read in the review is that it's been termed country gaze because they somehow manage to blend twangy sort of alt country with shoegaze distortion, and I'd never thought about it before. But on one of the tracks, Wound Up Here, having read that, I then think, oh yeah, I sort of get that. It is a bit shoegazy, and at the same time, there's a bit of a sort of like Americana going on in there. It's a remarkable album. The opening side is slightly gentler than the second side, and I can't quite decide whether that's just because the second side has got Wasp on it, but I think it's slightly heavier on the second, slightly more ballady on the first. But it's remarkably varied. It never drifts. And I saw it when I was reading the reviews. I saw it described as a patchwork of chaotic elegance. And I think that sums it up nicely, because it's a bit, that doesn't really mean anything, but it is slightly chaotic, but very elegant at the same time. And it's got 12 tracks. It's a single LP. And this one's blue, but they called it Eco Mix. So apparently, it depending on what happened to be in the pre-used vinyl they make it out of, it can come up in any colour. So this one's blue. and so too, now we come to the two records that have been produced by or released by bands which have been around a very long time. And the first is by Faithless, and it's called Champion Sound. And I wasn't really expecting this, a Faithless album without Maxi Jazz. That is really, really good, because Maxi is such a strong part of Faithless. You'd think, I wasn't sure. And my good friend Mark Perry, was into this first, and I thought, and was extolling it. So I thought, I love Faithless, and I've got to go and listen to it. And it is brilliant. It's a full double, and it somehow is a tribute to Maxi. But also a reinvention of Faithless without him. The first side is really all about Maxi, and the first track, Forever Free, features the last recording by Maxi before he died. I think he died in 2022, around then. And he's urging people to be completely you as you can. And it sort of that segs into In Your Own Groove, which is a trademark Faithless pumping house, and it's driven by Sister Bliss's synths. And it reprises Maxi saying, repeating the word "forever free" through it, and that's a sort of consistent through the whole of the first side. So, for example, the third track, which I really like, I do a sample of that. It's called Fugitive, and it happens on there as well. And then as they move into the other, onto the other sides, they've got various guest vocalists going on, and the music mixes. So there are plenty of dance tracks on here, but it's not all for the dance floor. So there are sort of some fairly ambient and introspective moments, and there's some real epic. I mean, Book of Hours takes up the whole of the third side of this record, and it's over 20 minutes. I think it's 24 minutes, so this is crammed on. They must have tightened the grooves for that one, and it's really epic, and it's really the best way of describing it is Sister Bliss exploring her sort of orchestral and ambient learnings, but it's never dull. It's essentially instrumental going on for. There's some voice here and there, but it's essentially an instrumental, and it's brilliant. This is a remarkable album in every which way, and it's got vocals, nice pictures, and huge sound system. I should presume is where the Champion sounds come from. It's not necessarily my favourite album of the month, but it's certainly one I'm absolutely loving. But I would say this is the most interesting of all the albums I've got this month, and it's 13 tracks, because some quite long. There's a few shorter ones on hot pink vinyl. I would guess Sister Bliss must have chosen that one, and so we. So we come to my the last of these new releases, and it is by the band Etienne and their album International. So this is their 13th apparently and final album. So they've said, right, they will carry on as a band and touring and so on, but they're not going to produce any more new music. So this apparently is their last album. It's the first one I've ever got. Frankly, I've never really been into them. Sort of okay. This was the reason I got this, is it was the Rough Trade album of the month. So it came. I listened to it and thought, actually, that's not bad. But to be honest with you, as I've sort of listened to it now 3 or 4 times, I've sort of become bored with it. It's really not my my cup of tea. But this is probably the most popular out of all the albums. So, you know, don't be put off by the fact that it's not my cup of tea. It will be for a lot of people. So, you know, Saint-Etienne, they're a trio. They come from originally Croydon in South London. Saint-Etienne is a town in central France, but they named themselves back in the 90s or whenever they kicked off after the football team of that town, who, you know, in the sort of 80s and 90s, I think it was, particularly the 90s, sort of punched above their weight, shall we say, in European football competition. They were always appearing in like the European Cup and stuff like that, and they named themselves after that, and you know, and it comes through. It's decent synth pop, but I'm not a great lover of synth pop. It's sort of unlike Saint-Etienne, the football team. This never reaches the heights, in my opinion. Daft Punk, it definitely isn't. And the more I listen to it, the more it's sort of slightly anodyne, middle of the road. Sarah Cracknell, the singer, does have a picture of her somewhere. Does have a lovely voice. But it just doesn't grab me. I find it slightly dull. There have been some very mixed reviews of this, some really, you know, really gushing ones. A lot of people really, really like this. But I read one Far Out magazine summed it up for me. So they described it as a middle-aged night out in a nutshell. And they acknowledge the band's longevity and cultural contributions, but they argue that this album leans too heavily on 1980s nostalgia and lacks freshness for a 2025 audience. The collaborations are seen as the strongest moments, yeah, because there are collaborations with other artists on here. But the overall tone, this really sums it up for me. I'm sorry, it's not for me, but they summed it up. The overall tone is described as cheesy and garish, reminiscent of Eurovision-style spectacle. So there you go. Now, Take Me to the Pilot, which is the one I've heard on the radio I've heard, so I presume that's the lead-off single. And that's probably as close to a standout track as he gets for me. But it's not very standout. It's just a bit better than the others. The best thing about this record to me is the vinyl, which is brilliant. And there you see, it's like the Italian flag. And it is described as Italian 90. So they've named this after the World Cup, which took place in Italy in 1990, Italian 90, which somehow seems appropriate for a band which was named after a sort of, you know, a 90s football team. So there you go. It's a single LP. There's, I don't know how many tracks are there, 11 or so, I think.
Take me to the pilot. I feel I need to fly now. Another reason why now. And you will recognize me.
It's been a good month this month. So, you know, whilst, you know, I've got one which I think is a little bit disappointing. That's just me. There's nothing wrong with the record. And lots of people I know do like Saint-Etienne. It's just a bit too sort of pop. It's too, you know, I don't mind synth pop, but, you know, I like the Daft Punk style synth pop, not this. So anyway, I'm rabbiting on as usual. Thanks for watching. Cheers.